Hey everybody, John Granato from the bench, mornings on ESPN 97.5 and 92.5. I'm being joined by Dave Hardisty, who runs Clutch Fans, clutchfans.net, the number one Rockets site in the world. Now, if you haven't already subscribed to this channel, please do that right now. But let's talk some Rockets basketball. If you haven't heard, James Harden traded to the Nets. You've been in a cave if you haven't heard this. So Dave, let's break it down. How much of this breakup with James and the Rockets had to do with James? How much of it had to do with Tillman? How much of it had to do with the way Daryl Morey left his team?
I think the way Daryl Morey left played a role, but I think this is mostly on James Harden. I mean, he wanted out. I think that was kind of in the works well before training camp came about. I think Daryl even knew some of that was going on. So I think this was Harden's doing. He wanted out, saw kind of the writing on the wall with really with Russ and with the picks that they've given up and the situation with the roster. So I think he just fell in love with the opportunity to play with a guy like Kevin Durant, and he pushed for that from the beginning.
Yeah, I think I've heard behind the scenes that Kevin Durant was the one that pushed this, that he initiated the whole thing with James this offseason, and James worked it perfectly to get out of here and go join his buddies. That's what the league is now, isn't it?
Yeah, it's become the player empowerment era, and even guys. I mean, KD once upon a time said we shouldn't be doing this. Harden has said this as well, and they all come down to that at the end. When they need that ring, they've got to get a few superstars together, and they're going to be a very strong contender, I think, without a doubt. But yeah, it's frustrating to lose a guy like James Harden because that was your shot at a ring.
What do you think about what they got as we speak? It's Victor Oladipo. And then it's swap picks for 4 years. It's 3 first-rounders from the Nets and 1 from the Bucks. What do you think about the haul that Rafael Stone got?
I think he did fantastic as far as the picks are concerned. I think you can't do any better, really. You're taking a franchise that is going all in and is desperate to win a title, and you've gone at 7 years out and pretty much control their drafts. I mean, the swaps are just the ability to upgrade your existing pick, but the other picks are coming to you outright. So, and they're all unprotected. Anything can happen. I mean, we just watched, the Rockets commit future assets for Russell Westbrook, and 12 to 18 months later, this whole thing has been flipped upside down. So anything can happen with the Brooklyn Nets a year out, much less 7. So I think as far as picks are concerned, he did fantastic. Oladipo, it's kind of wait and see. I think most fans wanted to see a young prospect like a Ben Simmons, a Tyler Herro, somebody along those lines, Jaylen Brown with Boston, somebody that you could, if not build around, at least be part of your future long term. We're not sure about Victor Oladipo being that, but I think they'll be pretty good with him right now, and I think he'll be showcased for the next couple of months before the trade deadline.
Yeah. We know James and his press conference, that we're not good enough press conference, really facilitated this, that the Rockets said you can't come back. Stephen Silas and the players didn't want him back in the locker room. So that speeded things up. But how about what Kyrie is doing? How much did that speed things up on the Nets end?
I think a great deal. I mean, their whole contention status was based on having these two superstars, a playmaker and just the ultimate weapon in Kevin Durant, and they really don't know what's going to happen with Kyrie. They don't know if he's coming back this year or what. I mean, I think, there's a lot of rumors flying around, and we don't know what his mental state is right now. So for them to be able to get James Harden and put him alongside Kevin Durant, I think that's an upgrade in Kyrie Irving, to be totally honest with you. And I think those two will be great together. But I think Brooklyn was definitely feeling the need to make this move because of what was going on with Kyrie.
You mentioned that the Rockets didn't get a young player, Dave, and Daryl Morey always said, I can't get free agents to come here. It's not L.A., it's not New York, it's not Chicago, it's not the bigger cities. What do you think going forward, since you don't have that young cornerstone player other than Christian Wood, what do you think about their chances of getting free agents in here?
Well, it's a great point. I mean, it's you look at the New York Knicks and you would think people would love to go there, and they haven't been able to land a big free agent. It's really all about getting that first guy, and then everyone else comes. You look at Dwight Howard. The Rockets reportedly had a deal in place a year or so before they ended up getting him to bring him in, and he didn't want to be here. the trade that they made, the 3-team trade that had Chris Paul going to the Lakers. I mean, why wouldn't the Rockets have just traded for Chris Paul? He didn't want to be here. And yet both of those guys, when they started to see James Harden play, they wanted to be here. This was a great situation. So I think the Rockets are going to have to hit a home run somewhere along the lines, probably through the draft. And people are going to have to see a bright future, free agents, and then you'll start to get somebody to come in, because that's what they did with James Harden. They got lucky. They found a perfect situation to acquire a 23-year-old, budding superstar, and that basically turned everything around and made the Houston Rockets a very attractive location. So they're going to have to get lucky with the first guy, and then from there they'll become attractive again.
Well, Rafael Stone did a nice job with his first trade or signing with bringing in Christian Wood. That's for sure. I talked to Tillman about him, and Tillman said, Rafael Stone has been in on every single deal that Daryl Morey has done. So, and he and Eli Wittis, both integral in all of the deals that Daryl Morey had always done. It's really weird seeing how different, though, Rafael Stone is going about it, where Daryl just didn't give a flip about any draft picks. Rafael Stone is stockpiling them.
Yeah, that's a great point as far as contrast. I think, you're right. He started to do that before even, they traded Harden. I think when you trade Harden, those picks become extremely valuable. To me, once they were in contention status, Daryl was always discounting those first-round picks because he wanted something that could help them win right away. But yes, so far I've been really impressed with Rafael Stone. I think he's done a great job. I think as far as their draft pick status, they're in a great situation compared to where they were just a month ago.
Give me a timeline for Rockets to be back in the playoff picture, even middle of the pack. Let's say 4-5 seed. How long a rebuild is this?
It's very hard to put a timeline on this. I think they are in a situation where this year it doesn't really benefit them. It's a huge risk to bottom out this year. I mean, they have the swap with OKC. It's top 4 protected. So if the Rockets win the lottery, then they actually will keep that pick and that swap goes away. But it's a big risk if you're, one of the worst teams in the league and you don't win the top 4 pick and you're 5, 6, 7, that pick goes to OKC. So I think next year and the year after, there's the possibility of bottoming out and trying to acquire somebody in the draft that's fantastic before the Westbrook obligation comes back up again in 24. So I think it's going to be a few years. I think they're going to hopefully add a piece each year that they think could be long-term, or they're going to continue to flip those pieces that they don't like long-term for more picks and try the process over again. So, but right now they should be competitive. I like their chances of at least making it to the play-in 9 or 10 in the West, but obviously that's not a great spot to be in. You're not contending for a title. I don't have any expectations like that for the Rockets.
James Harden, how are we going to remember him?
I think it's over time, maybe a year or two out. I think we'll remember him fondly, and we'll look at his career here in Houston and think of it as historic. I mean, especially once we watch players, having 20-point games and thinking, oh, that's great. It's hard after you watch the guy put up 40 and 50-point triple doubles to go back to a 20-point score and think this is an outstanding player. I think we'll look back fondly. Right now, it's just difficult because of the way he went out. I think there was a classless element to some of the things that he said about his teammates, and that stings a lot of fans right now. I don't think fans right now are in love with James Harden, but I think over time, similar to what they did with McGrady, they'll be fans of what he did here.
And early on your site, overwhelmingly positive about the trade, negative? What's the percentage?
It's just under 70% like this trade from what I've gathered in our polls. Most people are positive about it. I think they wanted a little bit better player. I think there's a contingent that really wanted the Ben Simmons package from Philly. But as far as picks, which is what most thought were essential to this deal, I don't think you can do any better. I think Rafael Stone knocked that part out of the park. So for the most part, people are relieved that it's kind of over. We can get back to watching the team again and at least knowing there's no other agendas on the floor. and they like the future, but it's a sobering reality. We know that there's no real contention element here.
Dave Hardisty, ClutchFans.net. We appreciate it, man. Thanks again. Great talking to you.
You too, John.